Stephen was abruptly woken up by the sound of someone sobbing echoing down the hallway. He could hear someone else singing as well, but it sounded farther away. Slowly getting to his feet, Stephen hardly noticed his black eye and struggled to call out, "Spinel? Amethyst? Pearl? Garnet?" A very familiar voice responded, "Stephen? Stephen, are you okay?" "Spinel," Stephen yelled back. Accidentally pressed his hands on the yellow force field, but what surprised him was that it was barely affected by the field, creating yellow currents on his skin. "Ew, cool," Stephen said as he pushed himself through the force field. Turning to the right, where he heard Spinel's voice, he ran down the hall and saw another cell with a force field, the pink gem held behind it, unable to touch the field. "My baby!" Spinel cried out with joy, eyes wet with tears. "You're still alive! Thank the stars!" Then she looked concerned. "How did you get out?" Stephen struck out a hand right through the hole and says, "Like this." His voice stuttered from the field. Spinel wanted to panic, but calmed when she saw that it didn't affect him. So she slid right through the hole, brought Stephen for a hug, which he happily recompensated. "Oh, my sweet baby," she whispered. "I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you." Stephen nuzzled into her shoulder. "It's okay." Then Spinel pulled away, seeing Stephen have a black eye, and gasped, gently running her hand on his face. Stephen was confused until Spinel hugged him tightly again. "Oh, Jasper," she whispered, oozed with hatred. "If only I could shatter you 1,000 times, I would." Stephen became slightly concerned about her behavior, right before they heard an angry shout behind them. Both Spinel and Stephen let go of each other and walked towards this smaller red gem cell. Spinel gasped, "Ruby?" "Ah!" Ruby jumped back against the wall, nearly scared of her wits. "Oh, it's you." Spinel mumbled. "Did Jasper separate you?" Stephen stared up at her. "What do you mean?" Spinel couldn't find the words. Neither could Ruby, so she angrily banged her fist on the wall. "This is just perfect. Hey! Spinel tried to calm her down. "We'll find Sapphire here if you help us." "I don't need your..." Ruby then yelled before she saw the unique of the warrior, the pink gem's eyes. She stood up. All right. "Awesome," Stephen proclaimed as he stood up between the force field. Ruby panicked and calmed when Stephen wasn't affected and walked out of the hole. "Cool," said Spinel. "We'll just have to stick together." Ruby nodded. "Right." Walking down the winding hall, Stephen, Spinel, and Ruby looked around, trying to force of Sapphire's singing. Stephen nervously glanced up at Spinel again. "Spinel, what do you mean by Jasper separating Ruby and Sapphire?" Spinel bit her lip. "Well, you see, Garnet is When they heard a loud singing to stop, she stopped singing. Ruby was getting even more worried. "Sapphire!" "Shh, keep it down," Spinel hushed her. "Jasper or Peridot could be anywhere." Stephen then looked around out of the window, staring at the light of the planet from space, revealing that they were in a gem warship. The trio tried running until they could find another cell holding a blue gem inside, and Spinel recognized who it was. "Lapis!" she called out. Lapis lifted her head, her eyes flaring with hope as she got up. "Spinel? Stephen! But how did you two get out?" Stephen stood at the force field like this. He stuck his hand through, making a hole large enough for her to fit through. "Come on," Spinel gestured. "We're gonna get you out." Lapis hesitated. "But haven't I caused enough trouble? I even told you why we were all here." "That doesn't matter anymore. We still want to help you. You're our friend," Spinel reassured. Stephen still creating a hole through the force field. Lapis quickly got out of the cell and Stephen backed away. "Thank you," she mumbled. Spinel smiled. "Of course. Now let's go find Sapphire." Finally, breathed Ruby, having stopped pacing around the room and ran down the hallway, making sure they wouldn't get caught. The singing began once more, and they arrived at the doorway. "We can't leave yet." Spinel, Stephen, Lapis, and Ruby all stopped and hid behind the corner as they heard about the door opening and Peridot complaining. Walking beside Jasper until they stopped at the cell containing the singing Sapphire, Ruby wasn't about to shout her name, but Spinel covered her mouth. Peridot tapped her foot impatiently. "The whole point of coming here was to check on the cluster." Jasper punched her in the wall near her cell. "Stop singing, Rose Quartz takes a priority." As Jasper ordered Peridot to set out a home world, Spinel whispered to them, "All right, I have a plan. The three of you guys save Sapphire, find Pearl and Amethyst, and stop Peridot. I'll handle Jasper." "What?" Lapis Piss whispered, yelled as Peridot passed them, grumbling. Stephen wrapped his arms around the pink gem. But you can't! She poofed you! She'll do it again! Not without love on my side, Spinel winked. Stephen stared at her with glistening eyes, and slowly, Spinel kissed his forehead, nodding to Lapis and Ruby, who ran down the hallway, leaving the free gems to handle Sapphire. Jasper was still walking down the hall, deep in thought, as she stepped into a room and paused when she saw the pink gem. Hey Jasper, Spinel said. We have some unfinished business. Jasper was astonished. How did you escape? Spinel grinned. Like I said before, I'm full of surprises. Brushing off her internal shock, Jasper then took a step forward and preparing to fight. Fine, if you're willing to wish to embarrass yourself again, then so be it. But at least you can do is give me your all. Much to her confusion, Spinel chuckled darkly and her pink eyes spiraled. Oh, what you saw before wasn't all I had. I can do so much more. Spinning her head like a twister, her body like a twister, except for the head, she charged towards Jasper, who held her upper hands to defend herself. Even from the force of Spinel colliding into her to make her take a few steps back, grunting and trying to stand in place. Don't like that, huh? Spinel mocked. How about this? Continuing to rotate her body rapidly, Spinel spun her way towards her foe. Delivering punches, Jasper was shocked by Spinel's strength and was having more difficult time picking up with Spinel's speed. To her, this was Spinel so far different from the Spinel she knew during the war. Boy, Spinel chirped with marvelous joy. I just love that part. When do you and Peridot come back to threaten our home? She delivered yet another swing at Jasper on the right in the face, and Jasper stumbled backwards. Garnet, Stephen, and Lapis continued to run down the hall, finding Pearl and Amethyst. After a quick rescue, they managed to barge in the control room. Peridot was immediately taken down by Amethyst and Lapis, leaving Pearl to try to turn the ship while Garnet and Stephen watched the fight go down for the cameras. And when do you establish Garnet into Ruby and Sapphire? Spinel now said as they took a look at Jasper by the arm and flung her towards the wall, causing her another dent. Jasper wordlessly gritted her teeth, becoming increasingly frustrated. She summoned up her helmet and charged towards the other gems. Spinel blinked and smiled, knowingly that she had dodged sideways, and the orange gem ended up crashing into the wall, groaning. Jasper stood up. But Spinel now pounced onto the other gem, putting pressure force to Jasper by the boot, and Spinel leaned over to her and whispered venomously, Do you want to see the best part was? Jasper grunted as he tried to remove the gem off of her, but she was stopped as Spinel held her in enlarging fists and grew them back together. The mad grin warping into a scowl, her eyes spiraling with fury. Was then you hurt my precious little baby! She screamed. Her high-pitched voice sounded hatred as she slammed her fist down upon her enemy. The impact sent Jasper breaking through the floor with the ship falling down to the engine room. She gasped for breath. Shakily she stood up as Spinel hopped down from above her, still in range and ready to continue. You, Jasper breathed. How did you? But you were a coward. All those centuries ago. You didn't try to fight me. I was defending myself, Spinel replied. That doesn't make me a coward. I'm not the Spinel you knew from long ago. I am the Crystal Gem, a friend to everyone I trust and the protector of Earth and Stephen, and I'll fight anyone who dares to hurt the ones I love, like you. Jasper stood up, preparing herself as Spinel lunged at her, appearing almost primal when they landed on the floor, wrestling with their hands clasped together. Pink eyes and amber eyes glared at each other down with resentment, until Spinel had heard a spark. Twisting her head around to see the ship's lower power source. This became a mistake as Jasper turned to pin her down, even holding the gem instead to establish her. Jasper's toothy grin stretched wide. You really think you were something? I admit, you put more effort. But what do you have? How immature. Face it. Even if Rose did fill that little gem of yours with that, you're at least still stupid, lonely little Spinel in the galaxy. However, Spinel wasn't fazed by it. In fact, she began to laugh. Immature? Huh? Is that something you shock y'all? With that huge surge of strength, Spinel lifted and kicked Jasper off of her, throwing her in the power source, and the orange gem was getting electrocuted and causing the engine to explode. Realizing that this could lead to, Spinel made her legs into a spring and hopped out of the ship. of the engine. Needed to find the others. Back in the control room, the gems were left at ships shake and explode. Peridot escaping from Amethyst and Lapis's grip. They left in a pod before they could hold her down again. Just as Spinel ran into the control room, but back at the control ship, of course, the gems saw that Spinel was there. And even Steven. Spinel! Steven cheered, rushing over to give her a hug. Pearl joined in the embrace. Spinel appreciated the hugs, but looked at the others. Where's Peridot? She got away, Amethyst shouted over the shaking. Lapis held on to her dear life. We're gonna crash! Hold on, everyone! Garnet ordered as the ship began to descend back down to Earth. Moments after the ship exploded over the beach, Lion ran over to find the gems and through the rubble and debris. When he heard something, Lion roared, revealing the crystal gems, Steven and Lapis, protected under Steven's bubble, which unraveled around them. Nice one, Garnet commented. Lapis moved out of Spinel's grasp and her eyes gleamed. You saved me. Thank you. No problem, Spinel replied happily. Sorry about that, Steven, said Garnet. We are saving our big surprise for your birthday. Pearl's eyes widened. You don't mean... Steven met Ruby and Sapphire? Exclaimed Amethyst. Yeah. Steven nervously scratched the back of his head and Spinel laughed. Suddenly, a distance away, a hand emerged from the rubble. Jasper blood bursting out of it, panting and covered in injuries. The gems backed away as Jasper limped towards them and glared at them. Don't think you've won, she snarled. You're still no match for me. Spinel slowly got up. That's what she then fell to her knee, and her heel wounded. Steven noticed and expected her wound. Concerned, Lapis stared in revelation, lifting her head to face Jasper, and her face turned to anger. Don't you dare hurt them, she screamed, the ocean water raising from the chains, and then they trapped Jasper in a tight hold. Jasper shocked, trying to escape. What? What are you doing? Lapis walked over. I'm making sure you don't hurt any of my friends. The water slowly began to drag the orange gem into the water, still trying to break free off the chains. Lapis, Spinel called out. What are you doing? Can't you come with us? The blue gem turned to face Spinel. Her blue hair was dancing in the wind. I need to stay with her so I can focus on my powers properly. I'll be fine. After all, you saved me, so let me save you. But, Spinel tried to protest, but Lapis was already began to drag Gem into the ocean. Their eyes were meeting before Jasper disappeared, and Lapis dove in the water like a gannet. The gems all stood there in shock and said nothing, until Steven's phone rang, which he answered. Hello? Steven, I got your message, Connie said through the line. Are you okay? What's going on? I'm fine, Connie, Steven said. You're fine? But I thought you said... Steven laughed nervously. Yeah, funny story. As he tried to explain to Connie over the phone, Spinel fell to her knees, her arms lengthening like noodles and her pigtails flattered. I didn't do a thing. Now I've lost yet another, could have been a friend. Pearl then placed her hand on the pink gem's back. I'm sure we'll find Lapis soon. As soon as we fix that scrape on your leg. Spinel was still miserable, unable to help a gem who could have been befriended. She remained silent as MFS kept on celebrating, and Steven telling Greg what happened. Steven felt horrible, holding on to his phone and at the same time avoiding Connie's calls. He had no idea what to say to her, and he had just sung himself that he didn't want Connie to worry about him or be a part of whatever situation he's in. He knew why. She would want to help and endanger herself for him. Then his phone began to ring again. Steven picked it up into his dismay, glancing over the destroyed hand and back to the phone, his eyes glistening, and he raised his finger to ignore the call. Just then he remembered something years ago. Spinel was crying into the kitchen table, Steven unable to do anything except for concern. Pearl and Amethyst walked over without even a glance except for Garnet, who stopped beside her. As the others left, Spinel, Garnet spoke softly. What's the matter? You've been quiet all day. I know you have something to tell me. Steven nearly whimpered at the sight of the pink gem's guilt-written face. Garnet, I know I failed the mission. You all rely on me to finish off that monster, but I let it go instead. I just can't help it. I don't want to hurt everyone. Everyone's right about me, Garnet. I'm not a crystal gem. I'm too nice. The three beings present in the room remained silent. Spinel, Garnet sat beside her. Don't say stuff like that. You are a crystal gem. All of us do have different ways of using our skills, and yours is more. better than us. But of course, there is no shame in that. Pearl and MFS just need to learn that your way of fighting is not like theirs. And I know that very well. You're just good as we are. I don't want you to forget about that. Spinel's face lifted up with comfort, and Stephen wiped a worried tear from his eye, knowing that Spinel felt better. Tears swelled up in his eyes during that day. Spinel kept her feelings away from the gems as she didn't want to be supposed about it, but Garnet stepped down over and confronted her. Spinel did exactly what she was told, and as if she had some pressure had released itself or of others, and Stephen could feel it. It was the weight on his shoulders. If I kept pressing down on him each time he refused to answer Connie's call. Building up the courage, he answered the phone. "Connie," he said before she could begin, "let's talk in my house." While the other gems were cleaning up the debris with a building fence and a moat, Stephen sat on Spinel's lap, waiting for Connie. "I was so scared about throwing herself into danger," mumbled Stephen. "But I guess I'm not saying everything's not going to help either, is it?" Spinel nuzzled into his hair, wrapped his arms around him. "You're doing the right thing, love. She'll understand once we tell her." They instantly heard footsteps and saw Connie coming up to the porch. Stephen hopped out of her lap, opened the door, and greeted the girl with a hug. Sobbing, the three gems stared in confusion, but Spinel directed them away. "I'm sorry," Stephen cried. "I just didn't want you to get hurt for me." Stephen! Connie didn't mind the hug, but she was taken aback as she pulled away. "It's all right." Stephen lowered his chin, and Connie noticed the bandages wrapped around his eye. "What happened?" "I'll tell you everything," Stephen replied. Behind him, Spinel had a long, loving smile of the approval of the two left alone. "So this gem named Lapras dragged Jasper away, and somewhere at the bottom of the ocean?" "Yeah, and Peridot escaped, so she could be there anywhere by now." Connie sighed and lifted her legs to hug him. "That's a lot to take in." "I know, and again, I'm sorry for almost not leaving you hanging." Stephen lowered his head in guilt. "I just didn't want you to get involved." Connie looked at him. "But I want to be. I want to be part of your universe." She blushed. The children all stared at each other, brushing slightly until Greg walked in. "Kiddo, there you are," Greg greeted. "Oh, hey, Connie. You need a ride home?" Stephen sat up. "Oh, Dad, are you doing okay?" Referring to his breakdown hours ago, Greg nodded. "Yeah, I got it out of my system. I'm back to being your cool dad. Now let's get Connie back home before the Marshrons start to worry." They drove around Beach City, watching the citizens returning and restoring the areas where the pieces of the warship were strewn about, and soon they were driving out of town.